super Halloween vibe going today on the SuperCaZt. And welcome back to the SuperCaZt. This is Steve Z, the man who put the Z in SuperCaZt. And with me always is...
I am the Superfosh, the man who put the Super in SuperCaZt.
And we are here for our third edition of this Halloween extravaganza we got going. And we're talking about none other than the classic itself, the original Halloween.
And this is a film that really made me fall in love with the horror film genre. Like, I didn't grow up with a lot of horror films in my repertoire, as you did, and most people do. But this is a film that really made me realize what everybody was all about horror. I mean, it just has everything you want. A good villain, a good cast, just really creepy. I know, and we'll get into the plot and everything here in a little bit, but I know that there's a little bit of a suspense of reality a little bit, especially towards the end. But this is a very real movie in a lot of ways. Like, this is, and I think that's what makes it so scary is, you know, this could happen. And I know there's been copycats, and we'll probably talk about that later on, and there's definitely been sequels that went to some crazy situations. But when you talk about a film like the original Halloween, it's so creepy because of how real it feels from the beginning of this film.
Yeah, and I think the low budget adds to that. Definitely. I think it makes it look more, I don't know, documentary, but also I think unlike a lot of films in this genre, this slasher genre, you actually get to know the victims a little bit more, the babysitters, as you will. You get to see them go to school and leave school and talk about their lives, hang out with them a little bit. I really like that aspect of it, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, I like the word that you use, creepy. It definitely describes this film because, yeah, it's scary at times, but to me it's more like the state of mind that it puts you in while you're watching it. Just this unsettling nature of it. A lot of things going into that, by the way. It's Carpenter's direction. It's the music, obviously, that we'll definitely have to gush over later.
Oh, yes.
And, of course, it's the performance of Michael Myers, of The Shape, if you will, what it's called in this film.
Right.
I think all that adds to it. I mean, it's just a great, well-crafted horror movie. They don't make them like this anymore, as they said, and I don't think they really ever did. I think this is kind of one to its own. So I'm really excited to talk about it. Let's get into it.
Yeah, the making of this film is almost as impressive and incredible as the film itself. I've actually watched a couple of different making of documentaries, and just the way this film came about and got financed, I mean, it's an incredible story behind the scenes as much as it is in the film itself. Definitely.
I mean, John Carpenter, at this point, he made 2 films, and he's just riding off of Assault of Precinct 13, which in the States it didn't do so well, but and in England it did really well. And he gets approached by a producer. He says, "Hey, can you make this cheap horror film for 300? Or I think originally they said like 100K, and then Carpenter was like, "No, can we do it for 300K? You only have to pay me like 10,000, and I'll write, direct, and do the music too." And they're like, "Okay, that sounds great." And I noticed that he did make one good stipulation in his contract, that he got the rights to the character, rights to the franchise, which is good for him now, because as we know, this franchise is still going. But it's definitely interesting, like you said, the casting of it, the making of it. It's definitely all hands on deck filmmaking, which to me, I always like to see this. I mean, we talked about Rocky last year, and that was an example of it. It's just a movie that's made on a shoestring budget. You got the actors out there moving stuff around, helping to light scenes. I mean, but I think at the heart of it, you have a bunch of talented people that would eventually be tearing up Hollywood. I mean, the cinematographer, Dean Cundey, that guy works with Steven Spielberg a few years after this, and he's just has a great eye, and all his movies look wonderful. And of course, we know Jamie Lee Curtis blows up after this, and I think she got paid a paltry sum. It was not much money at all for her appearance. In fact, she had to pretty much bring her clothes from home, and I think they spent $100 on her wardrobe. So, pretty basic filmmaking, but it still looks great, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. I mean, it just looks great. It sounds great, and there's nothing like watching this film for the first time when you really don't know what's going on. You don't know about Michael, and you just kind of have to white knuckle it for a bit because you're scared because you get to know these characters so well that you're kind of like their friends yourself. So like when things start happening, you're like, oh my gosh, go next, or is there going to be anybody into this? I mean, it's so well crafted that it's really hard if you don't know what's going on to predict the end, and even the end itself is unpredictable. And so I think that's what makes this movie great initially, but I do think that there's a whole lot of rewatch value. I think there's a lot of stuff to watch that maybe you didn't see the first time because you're focusing on this thing and then you got this over here. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff to see in this film.
Definitely. And I guess we'll get into it.
Yeah.
Directed by John Carpenter. We've mentioned him before. We did an episode on one of his great films, Big Trouble in Little China. I mean, he's one of my favorite directors. Yes. We're actually going to do another one of his films here pretty soon. And this one is probably his most famous film. It's the one that put him on the map, and he's just a great director. What can you say about him?
Well, I love how you mentioned earlier about how he wanted creative control, and I find that was really interesting on his part to say, hey, I'll do this movie, but I want creative control, I want my name on the film, I want, all this, because that's pretty savvy for a guy. I think he was 29 when he made this picture, which, I don't know if I could make a movie like this at 29. What about you, man?
No, especially, it's a lot of pressure. You have this money. You have this money. You have people that are putting their careers on the line. You only have 4 weeks to shoot the whole film. So, and because the budget's so low, and you're spending pretty much all your money on camera equipment, every shot has to work. So that's kind of stressful. It's not like what some people run into now as they make movies where they're just like, just keep reshooting. It's all digital. Just keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just an incredible thing, and like I said a minute ago, the making of this film is almost as impressive as the film itself. And, in that documentary I watched the other day, in fact, I watched this the other day in preparation for our show, and it even talked about how Donald Pleasance, of course Donald Pleasance playing the great Loomis, which we'll get into the cast here in a minute, but he was completely confused about the plot for the longest time. And there's this spot behind the scenes where Carpenter is explaining a scene to Pleasance, and he's like, okay, kids do the deed. And Donald Pleasance goes, oh wow. He has no idea what's going on, and Carpenter's trying to explain stuff, and I love that. That was hilarious to me.
Yeah, and he only accepted it because his daughter liked the music from Assault on Precinct 13. So I'm glad he did, but definitely get into the cast later. So this film, if you're not familiar with it, starts off in Haddonfield, Illinois. And
made up town, by the way.
Yeah, it's made up, and we're seeing a very horrifying sequence. To me, this opening scene... Oh my gosh, yes. I guess we should start with the credits. If we're really going to give this film justice, it's kind of like an overture to it, I love movies that have an awesome credit sequence. And you get that music, it comes in, and you're just zooming in on this jack-o'-lantern, and it's just very simple, but it just looks awesome and just puts you in that mindset.
I know we talked about the music a lot at the close of our show, but I want to go ahead and talk about it now, if you will, because you mentioned the credits, and that song, even if you've never seen this movie, I guarantee you, if you play this song, the theme song, to 10 people, 9.5 are going to know what movie this is.
Yeah.
And it's very simple. We talk about other things like John Williams and, all these people that make the grandiose scores, Hans Zimmer. This is just John Carpenter himself, which, as you know probably, on his little piano, just making this up, and it's creepy. I mean, it fits perfectly. There shouldn't have been an orchestra or even like a rock band or something like that doing this. This needs to be just a little piano and the little metronome that's playing in the back, the little tick-a-tick-a-tick. I mean, it's just... As a person that loves like big orchestral stuff and, you know, this kind of thing, you would think that it wouldn't work for a little simple tune like this, but oh my gosh, it does.
Yeah, it's perfect. It just encapsulates the whole vibe of the film.
Yes.
It's perfect tone. It's unsettling just listening to the music because it's 5/4 time, which is not your standard thing. Like anytime you hear something in that, it just kind of puts you on edge a little bit, or just it makes your ears perk up. You're like, okay, I'm listening to something. And the fact that it just repeats over and over again and doesn't really change, it's
and you never get tired of it. It never gets old. You're never like, okay, we've heard that enough. Let's play something else. No, you're just like, stop playing that because it makes me think Michael Myers is next. It's perfect.
Yeah, definitely. And that whole credit sequence, I just love it. I was watching it last night, and beautiful 4K, and I was just it sucked me in, and it opens up with that those kids saying that like trick or treat song or whatever they're saying, and then before we know it, we're in the shoes of the killer. We are walking around with him, and to me, this is one of the most effective scenes of the whole film. Is just this opening sequence shot with the pan and glide, and we're just getting a POV of this guy stalking his sister, and we don't know what he's doing until he goes and reaches into that drawer and pulls out a knife, and it's just insane. Like, who thinks to start a movie off like this? It's just really crazy.
I mean, it's brilliant, honestly. It's really brilliant because you really get a sense of who this person, whatever you want to say, is. And the fact that he's so young and yet he still has this murderous instinct, if you will. But what I find interesting is that little hand that pulls the knife out of the drawer. Did you know that's the producer's hand?
Yeah.
Because she's got small hands, and she put the little blurriness in the picture, so it kind of does look like a little kid's hand. So it's... And even in that scene where... by the way, guys, this movie's 40 years old. We're not going to say everything about this film. We'll try to keep it as spoiler-free as we can, but we'll probably spoil most of the film, so you've been warned. The killing of his sister, while, it does look kind of hokey, because you can kind of tell he's not really stabbing anything, it's still effective because of the mask, the breathing, you can only see out of the eyelids. I mean, it's still so effective putting you into this head of this shape, as they call it.
Yeah, and I think it's very reminiscent of a great film, Psycho.
Yes.
It's because we don't see the knife touch anything, but in your head you can almost see it, happening.
Yep.
So it's more imagined than what's actually on there. So somebody could watch this like, oh, this movie's so violent, and they would get that sort of take from it just for the way it's shot. And then he just goes outside, and the big reveal happens. The parents walk up, they take the mask off, and you're like, oh, this is a little like 6-year-old, and you're just like, what just happened? And then all of a sudden we jump ahead several years, and we have Dr. Loomis and a nurse that she just signed up for the wrong job. I feel so bad for her when I watch this film. But they're gonna go pick him up, and sure enough, he's escaped, and he's gonna make his way back to his hometown and just basically torture these people and stalk them for the whole day. And it's very much a slow burn film because nothing happens after this initial 10 minutes or so as far as horror and scares, but it puts you always on edge because he's always there. He's lurking behind the bushes. He's sitting in the trees, or not sitting actually in a tree, but amongst the trees, staring across the street or something. And then once it starts happening, it's on. It's crazy film in that way, and I think that's enough plot. I think this film's more on experience than plot, anyway.
Well, before we get into sort of the crux of the film, I do want to go back to the kid part when he's a kid, because I heard in an interview with John Carpenter, he said that he actually went to a mental hospital in, I think, Kentucky for a class. And he said he saw this kid that just had no expression. He didn't talk. He just stared. And he said it was like he was staring into your soul. Like he just had... And I think some of Loomis's dialogue is exactly from what Carpenter experienced in the mental hospital.
Yeah.
That, to me, is one of the creepiest parts of the film, too, because... And kudos to the kid that played young Michael in that scene where he's in the hospital, because that kid has no eye expression. I mean, he just completely psycho. And speaking of psycho, isn't it ironic that the lead in this film, Jamie Lee Curtis, is the daughter of the lead female in Psycho?
It was good publicity. And
this was.
Yeah, I agree with you. The kid, there's a deleted scene that's not in the theatrical, but it's in like the television version, where it shows him in the hospital, and I just thought, I hate that they cut that scene out, because I think it actually added a lot to the story, but I think Carpenter, hearing him say why he cut it out, he said he doesn't want to reveal too much about Michael Myers. It's like, you don't want to know much about him. That's why he calls him the Shape. He doesn't call him Michael Myers, because to him, he's no longer a human being, and we don't really know.
And I love that they don't let the kid talk. Like, they doesn't say anything creepy. He's just completely mute. Because to me, that's even creepier. Because you have no idea what's going on in that head, if anything at all.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You don't know what he is.
Nope.
He's just the embodiment of evil.
Yep. So, I mean, just a really strong start. And that's how we kick this off, man.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a slow burn, which most of Carpenter's films are. But to me, I'm still into the film, because I like the dialogue. I like the where it's going. There's a sort of mystery aspect to it, because Loomis is trying to hunt him down, and he doesn't really know where to go, and it just makes you really invested in the plot. So definitely not a slow. Even though some people nowadays are like, "Oh, so slow, nothing happens for the first hour."
I think it's essential because it's really building what's going on. Obviously, the murder has to be depicted to show, where everything got started, and then you see the development of the town, of the community where all this happened. Some years later, so you get to know all these now teenagers and get into their world. And I think getting to know them good really affects what happens to them later, and affects you as an audience member. Because you care about these characters. It's not just, I saw them in a scene and now they're dead. No, they really do a good job. And kudos to Carpenter and the other script people really fleshing out these teenagers.
And so I guess we're starting off with our chief teenager, if you will. Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. And I don't know, it's a very good performance. Even though she herself, she's like, this is not me. So she was really acting, because she's nothing like this in real life. So it was kind of interesting to see her play this bookworm, because Laurie, she's kind of just a very frank person. She doesn't joke too much. She babysits to save her money. We don't know what she's saving it for. But she's a straight A student, really smart. And I don't know, what do you think about...
Okay, so when I first watched this film, I have to admit something. I loved the first time I watched this film start to finish. I did not love Jamie Lee Curtis's character.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the character or the performance or both or what it was, but I just did not like this character. I didn't mind the others and, whatever, but just something turned me off. Now, in subsequent viewings, I've gotten a heck of a lot more appreciation for Laurie and, what Jamie Lee Curtis does, but I just remember... you ever had that experience where you didn't like a character at first, and then they finally grow on you? Because it was a really weird thing, because I almost felt bad, even thinking that, because it's such a beloved role, and I get it now. But that first viewing, I just remember going, she lived and everybody else dies. What the heck?
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from that. I think maybe it's maturity, because she's definitely the most mature. She's the most observant, and that makes sense that she would be the one that would survive.
Yep.
And I think the main thing is that she's the dependable friend. That all the other friends are off trying to cavort around with their boyfriends while they're supposed to be babysitting. And she's the one that's going to step up and actually take care of 2 kids now. So I think she's kind of like that, and she's the one that also studies and works hard. So yeah, on paper it's not that exciting, and even execution it's not really, but I think it's just one of those things that she's just very normal. She's just a normal teenage girl, but she's not like the popular one. She's not the cool one.
I wouldn't call her a goody-goody. I wouldn't call her, like pompous or prude or whatever, but definitely is more mature side compared to some of the other, especially females in this film.
Yeah, and one of the girls that she hangs out with the most, I guess, is Annie, played by Nancy Loomis. And the reason why I'm segueing to her right now, just to show you that Laurie's not a goody-goody. She lights it up with Annie in the car, and
she does.
That's a scene that does. I don't know how they edit that out in the TV version. Yeah. I did not know until I got it on DVD, like in college. I was like, "What? They're getting high right now," and it makes the pretty much the next like 10 minutes of the movie actually make more sense. Like otherwise you're like, why are they talking like that? There's some weird dialogue. Why are they so scared about seeing her dad right now? And then it doesn't make sense. But on the theatrical version, they do it. They smoke while listening to "Don't Fear the Reaper," and it's just a good scene.
Definitely.
But Annie, I'm not gonna say she's my favorite of the girls.
I would, but that's just me.
Yeah, I really like Nancy Loomis' performance. She's the sassy one. She's got the good jokes. She's an idiot though. She just puts herself into dumb situations, and the whole time, as the viewer, you're just yelling at her. It's like, "What are you doing? Why are you going out to do laundry right now? Why are you getting stuck in a window? What the heck?"
I don't know who's dumber though, her or her boyfriend.
Oh, you're talking about Linda. Yeah, Linda's.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, we don't get to see Annie's boyfriend. She was going to go meet him, and then That's right. Unfortunately, she doesn't get out. But what are you thinking about Annie?
I like that. She's an interesting character, and like you said, she makes a lot of dumb mistakes. And she's probably my least favorite, actually, of the character.
Okay, you're confused.
Because I got it first. I was meaning the blonde. I'm not good with names, man.
Oh yeah. PJ Souls is Linda. She is awesome. I agree with that. I don't know what it is about PJ Souls. Every movie she's in, it's just great.
But her boyfriend's dumb as dirt, so.
Oh yeah, he's stupid. Yeah.
I didn't miss him. He's one of the kills that you're like, I don't care.
Yeah, I do feel bad for him though. It's just like he just went downstairs and.
But I do love that scene because it shows Michael Myers doing this number, looking at him after he's killed him, almost like he's admiring his work.
Oh yeah.
In fact, before we get into this, I got an interesting story. So years ago, I was working at a call center, and on Halloween we got to dress up in costume, right? Well, one person, and I did not know who it was till the end of the day, dressed up as the Shape or Michael Myers or whatever you want to call him. He had the mask, he had the overalls, and he was probably around the same height. I saw this dude in the break room, and he was totally in character. Like, he was just walking around slow, and I already had like a phobia of Michael Myers by then, so I was like, I'm not sitting around here. So I finally found out, I think a day or two later, who the guy was, and I was like, dude, you made me almost like pee myself when I saw you, because he's walking down the hall, and you're like, that's freaking Michael Myers. So, interesting story there. Yeah, Michael Myers is very frightening, but Linda is not frightening. Nope. She's just your standard teenage girl. She's pretty interesting, but I guess now that you mentioned Michael Myers, I guess we'll talk about him. He's played by Nick Castle, who he's not an actor per se. He's more of actually he's a director now, but wasn't he a stuntman or something?
Yeah, he's like a stuntman, and he's a writer. He helped create Snake Plissken for Escape from New York, but basically, he just had the whole movements down. You just had to stand and look scary, walk slowly, and just be menacing. And he's definitely got that down. And got paid a whopping $25 a day for his work. But he probably would have done it for free because just John Carpenter's his good friend.
Sure.
But I think the mask that they picked is perfect. It's just the William Shatner Star Trek mask that they painted white and did some stuff to it to make it just look so blank and expressionless and just not even of this world. Like he's just cold. He's just, I don't know. It's just very unsettling.
Yeah, I mean, this mask is iconic. I mean, like I said, if you didn't know this film, if I showed you the mask, 9.5 people would know where it comes from. And I think it's funny, I've seen different clips of sequels, and up until the recent movies, which I think the mask, you can't really argue, the mask looks awesome in the recent movies. But I've seen some sequels of the mask, and it's like, they got worse.
Yeah.
I mean, for something that's so cheap made, and, you know, just spray painted on, white paint, how do you make that worse? Like, how do you screw up even worse? I don't understand that a bit.
I've never understood that either. It's just like, this movie, they got the look perfectly, and the others, they start just looking goofy.
Like, do you think there's some sort of legal thing where they're like, yeah, you can't use that mask unless John Carpenter says so, and maybe he refused to let people do in the future, or what do you think?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I would say if anything, it was probably a William Shatner thing. I'm not sure. He's like, wait a second. I don't want you using my face for that.
People were probably creeped around him after a bit.
Yeah. But I guess our last guy that we probably should talk about is Donald Pleasance. We mentioned him before. He's got some of the best scenes in the film, in my opinion. Yes, you could accuse him of overreacting at some times. But I think if you knew who Michael Myers was and you were his doctor, you'd probably be freaking out too. Like, this guy is loose. He's going to kill people. So it's one of those deals where you're watching it. Yeah, some critics would say, yeah, he's overacting. He's being too crazy. But I think if you've hung out with Michael Myers this much, you would probably be a little crazy. You might be a little off kilter from that.
No doubt of that in my mind. But also, I think it's interesting, and this is, you know, not really overstated, but I think it's true, is that Loomis, as much as you can, I guess, really loves this kid and really wants to help this kid. I think it's not so much he wants him to die, or I mean, I guess he get to that eventually, but I think at the start, when he's just a little kid, he kind of grows an attachment to him. Whether that's good or not, I don't know, but so I think he's really has some care about him up until the end of the film.
Maybe, or he seems like to me he's just trying to help others more so at that point, and maybe protecting Michael from himself. I don't know, but I think the speech where he's just talking about how he looks at the eyes of Michael and he's just evil and kind of irredeemable at this point. I mean, the man ate it. Yeah. Who knows what he ate? Do you know what Michael cooked on the stove that grossed everybody out? Was it just some animal, some pet?
Yeah, for real.
What did he cook? I'm just like, who does that? But he eats something, but Loomis knows that this guy's bad news and that he's just basically the personification of evil. And to me, that's the biggest thing about this film that makes it so effective is we don't know anything about him. I mean, in the sequels, yes, they create a backstory for him, but it's just mental information. And to me, that's my favorite type of storytelling, where they don't tell you everything. And oftentimes
you have to come up with it for yourself, really.
And oftentimes what you're imagining is a lot worse than what they could come up with. And I just really think that's effective, that this evil is just in the shadows always. He's watching, and once the night comes on, that's when he springs into action. You notice he doesn't kill anybody during the day. There's no violence during the day. But as soon as night rolls around, it's on. And he's picked out the people he wants to get.
I've come up with two film theories, and I want you to tell me which one you think is more relevant. A, he's demon-possessed. Like, somehow he got a demon inside of him as a kid, and it took all his humanity, it took all his innocence, especially as a little kid, and he was completely controlled by this demon for the rest of his life. My other film theory is that Michael Myers is the... This could sound ridiculous, but I just thought of this the other day. He's a zombie of a person that was maybe afflicted somehow, and so he comes back from the dead, because maybe that's why he doesn't say anything, because he's pretty much dead.
Yeah, I mean, they actually tell what it is in the second one.
What did they say? Because I haven't seen the sequel.
It's your first one, actually. He's embodied by the spirit of Sam Hain or something like that, like the old
Makes sense.
Celtic spirit of Halloween, basically. And that's what it is. Carpenter says it's evil. You can't kill evil. And that's why when he gets shot at the end, or he gets stabbed a few times, we should say before that. He gets stabbed, he gets poked through the eyes. That doesn't kill him. But then he gets shot. That doesn't kill him. And that's because Carpenter would say that evil doesn't die. You just can't get a gun and shoot evil. So I kind of like his better than any of those others, personally. But we've talked about the music a little bit. Very simplistic, like he said, very effective. It's just one of those scores. I can just hear it in my head, the dun 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 dun. It's just like so perfect. It creates the tension that you need, and I just can't imagine anybody redoing this music and trying to think they could make it better. I don't think it's possible.
I don't think you could add anything or even take away anything to make this better. I think it is as good as it should be, and it really encapsulates what's awesome about this film.
Yeah, and to me, a big part of it is the cinematography, like the way it looks, the way it's shot. This is like half their budget was just on camera and film, and I think that's a good thing. If you're ever going to make like a short film or have a low budget or something like that, try to make it look as good as possible from the start.
Right.
All the sets and costumes and all that'll take care of itself, and I think that was a great idea. And I think they kind of were aided the fact that Panaglide came out right before this. Otherwise, they'd be setting up dolly tracks and stuff on a lot of these scenes. Instead, they're just like walking along with the girls, shooting them. They can do their POVs and all that. So definitely great photograph. Anything for you that you want to talk about this film still before we close it down?
No, I think we've hit everything as far as what this film does for me personally and how great it is. And if you love horror movies and somehow bypass this film, please watch it, especially now, because like I said, I do enjoy the new ones. I know you didn't so much, but there's just something unique about the first one that I don't think you could ever completely recapture. I mean, there's been movies that have tried, nobody's done better than this one, nobody. And it's a benchmark.
Yeah, I think it's all about the feel of it. It's the experience that you get from shot one to the very last scene. It's what it is, and to me, that's the thing that leaves me the most. When I think about this film, it is that last shot. It's where Loomis shoots him. He falls out the window. You see him on the ground. He's dead. And then Laurie asks him, "Was that the boogeyman?" He's like, "It was the boogeyman." But then they look back out. He's not there anymore. And we just have the song going, the theme song. It's echoing, and then we hear his voice as we slowly zooming out from the house and all the places where he's been. He's just everywhere. We can hear him breathing. He's still alive. And to me, that's the best. I mean, Carpenter is great at his endings, and this is one of his best. It's just, I think it makes me want to watch it again right now. I just think this movie's so suspenseful at times, mainly because it plays with your expectations. You expect something to happen, but it doesn't. And then once it happens, you're like, oh my gosh, didn't expect that to happen that way. And which to me is great for a horror film, because most horror films are just laughably predictable. This one is not. It's the classic. It's the staple. It creates a genre pretty much. And they never did it better than this, in my opinion. Yeah,
it's as close to the perfect horror film as I think you can get. And like I said, there's been tons of copycats, some better than others, but I'm with you. I kind of want to watch it too again, because it is just that, fantastic.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
And speaking of fantastic, on our next film, we're going to dust off dust off something for a film that a lot of people is not on their radar. And a lot of people don't know about this film, but it is a cult classic. I know there are some people that love this film, and that's generally how it works. You either don't know about it, you love it, or you just watch the first 10 minutes, you're like, that's the weirdest thing ever, and you turn it off. And that is The Phantom of the Paradise. It's a 1974 film, Brian De Palma directed, and it's a trip.
That's putting it mildly, man. But I agree. I think it's an interesting film, and I look forward to talking about it next episode.
Yeah, so tune in for that. We appreciate you guys joining as always, and we'll catch you next time on the SuperCaZt. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the SuperCaZt. We release these twice a week, so if you want to stay up on things, check out our Facebook group and our Twitter. We're very active. We'd like you to be active too. So find us SuperCaZt spelled with a Z. Also stay tuned to YouTube where we do live streams and stuff like that. Just like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for listening to the SuperCaZt.